This is Maya in my video diaries. I am trying to document my experience with secondary progressive MS and right to die activism. Um, it looks like we've lost our fight in Oregon for this year, and we are getting a courtesy hearing for Bill 2903 and 2232 HB for expansion of the definition of terminal. But we are at a loss to have these bills workshopped in the legislature, and the major opposition was apparently not even the right to lifers with all their religious fundamentalism, but members of our own movement, i.e. Compassion and Choices. And I guess there are fears that there would be abuse in the law if we extended or reformed this criteria to allow people with progressive, incurable, degenerative illnesses such as myself that are more along the lines of the Canadian and European model for medical aid in dying. They are full of political fear that their very basic law that is so stringent could be overturned if we ask for any kind of reform in this political climate that we're in now. And, you know, I mean, my feelings about this is that we can't wait for the culture change, because so many more people are going to, die terrible deaths in institutions and assisted livings, or spend decades bedridden, unable to advocate for themselves or get access to this option when their illnesses are really medically hopeless. And I'm very lucky that I have raised the monies and have the contacts to go to Switzerland and have really planned and thought through for this. But as a citizen of the United States, most people don't really have this kind of access, say, or even knowledge about what they're doing in Europe, as opposed to the United States. Everybody kind of just thinks about the Oregon model, but the Oregon model for death with dignity is extremely limiting, and they just don't allow so many patients that are suffering with these terrible illnesses. So we're hoping to bring our bill to the legislature again next year and get the support that we really need that we didn't get this year. And of course, New Mexico lost their fight with the End of Life Elizabeth Whitefield Act. So we're hoping that that will go through again next year. I'm glad that I'm part of this movement. I'm very sad over, the context in which it's in, which is, being so young and getting stricken with an illness that has really devastated every aspect of my life and paralyzed about 2/3 of my body, and severely cognitively impaired me so that I can no longer do a lot of things that I used to do. And it's strange, but I feel like I'm constantly, even being an activist in this Right to Die movement, having to still defend my choice to my family members, because there's this whole thing about how you're not supposed to go before your parents or your elders, and that's really forbidden no matter what the circumstances are. So I kind of feel like, choosing exit abroad and really opting out of this terrible medical scenario that I'm in is like offensive to them, that they would somehow accept it more readily if I was in that terminal phase in hospice. And I hope that as a culture we really start embracing our loved ones with these progressive, degenerative illnesses and see the plight that they're in, where, they are losing so much of who they are in their body and their mind and their selves, whether it's dementia, Alzheimer's, Huntington's, Parkinson's, progressive MS like I have, just losing everything that they are, but they're not part of the active, healthy culture, but they're not in hospice with that terminal phase. So it's like we're in between living and dying, and we don't know what we are in society. I know that in any given day I go from, unless I have help from my caregivers to go on a trip or to a medical, it's pretty much like going from bed to couch, back to bed to couch. Maybe I can go out for a little walk or physio, but then back to the couch and then bed, and then, setting up this whole virtual office space in my bed, because that's the only place where I can lay because of the spinal cord deterioration, and communicate with the rest of the world. And this is how I've been for 7 years now, from age 33 to now 39, 40. I went from essentially a hospital bed at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles, where I lost control of my legs, and they told me that I had MS for a while, undiagnosed, to now, and everything in between, which was, multiple rounds of chemotherapy agents. At one point I was helicopter lifted because they screwed up a spinal tap. Hospital upon hospital, some of the best and the brightest neuroimmunologists, and multiple MRIs and gadolinium dye, which they now, don't want to use because they realize that it can cause a lot of complications. It's just crazy. It's crazy, like, how much trauma I've been in, because of this illness, and because of the way our medical system works, that we don't heal anyone, that we keep diseases at a chronic state. And really, I'll just say it quite plainly, because I saw it happen with my mother and my sister and myself, that we're just making money, essentially, or the medical establishment is making a lot of money, never curing anything, and oftentimes misdiagnosing things for years, and throwing, psychiatric drugs and anti-anxiety drugs at people because they don't know how to explain the things that they are seeing. And then when you finally do get diagnosed, it's at a catastrophic level where not a lot can be done, but more infusions, more oncology drugs, more chemotherapy, and for what end? People are still dying, and they're dying terrible deaths. And in a situation like myself, I could go on for several more years till that terminal phase, where I would have, just ongoing palliative medicine and home health care, and there's nothing that could be done. And meanwhile, my entire spinal cord is degenerating from C2, which is here, to T11, which is like the base of my pelvis. So like the whole spinal cord looks like a buckshot. And I have multiple regions in my brain that are degenerating from the progressive MS. And still, every day I try to do different things and do what I can, have what quality of life I can, but it's really an exhausting nightmare. And while I don't want to die, I do not want to continue to live inside this. So I'm, fighting to get back to Switzerland, where I have the green light, and I will take the barbiturate medication. And along the way, you want to make amends with everybody and treat it in the way that you would if you were at terminal phase in hospice, where you're getting your affairs in order and you're facing your own fears about death. Being a young person, looking at your own mortality and all the things that you didn't get to do. For myself, most of my 30s were eaten up by this progressive illness, so I'm maybe emotionally still like in my late 20s or early 30s, because time just kind of stopped when I wound up losing control of my legs in that Cedars-Sinai hospital bed. And from that point on to now, I don't even really understand how to put all the pieces together because of all the trauma and the degeneration of my entire body, really, and everything that I was and myself. And spiritually, I think I'm a lot stronger. I'm definitely not afraid of death. And I'm trying to get as much video diary out there with my little selfie cam, and hopefully I can get a better camera soon, just discussing, you know, everything that I'm going through with the illness, which is like excruciating pain, and spiritually what my feelings are, what my dreams are like. I have these dreams where I'm literally like flying out of my body, flying really, really fast and traveling to all these like cities of light. And it's not even something that was planted by suggestion, because a lot of these near-death experiences, they'll talk about these same elements, but it actually is, you know, that I have the experience of being a light body without the pain and the degeneration and the paralysis that I've been in for so many years, and that I am, you know, really closer to what some spiritual teachers say is who we really are, which is a soul, the eternal soul, and that this is one kind of just flicker, millisecond in the timeline of our soul, this situation, this lifetime, this particular moment. So, you know, I'm working through my fears of death and feeling more and more confident and realizing that I'm definitely resolved in my decision to exit and take part in medical aid in dying. And I'm very sad that I have to let go of this life, but in a way, with an illness like progressive MS, with losing so much of myself, my mind and my body, and everything that I was, as a person in this life, I feel that, you know, it's been like this long death anyways that's gone on for so many years, and I'm really, you know, wanting rebirth and wanting to be free. So I just hope more and more people start discussing their experiences of what it's like to be inside these incurable degenerative illnesses, and that more and more people come and talk about, you know, right to die, what their feelings are about it, and that we discuss it. I don't feel it's in the same discussion as suicide. I feel medical aid in dying is something very different, but as I've said in previous video diaries, I also believe that suicide is something we need to talk about more as a society and have less shame about it. So this is now April 2nd, 2019, and my exit date, or appointment as they call it, keeps getting pushed back further and further. We're supposed to take like a little bucket list down to New Orleans and ride the steamboats and go see the old plantations, me and my caregiver and my dad. So I don't really know how I'm going to make this journey, but I'm going to force myself to, even if it means like my caregiver pushing me in the wheelchair through the French Quarter or whatever. You know, I think that it's something that I should see, and I should have happy memories as before I leave the planet. And yeah, so my new caregiver, Stephanie, is quite special. She's well versed in death and dying and helping people and guiding people through this process, and she really seems to be one of those people that authentically is not afraid of death and dying, not afraid for herself and not afraid to be around it, and really feeling like it's a privilege to see somebody transition, and that's, you know, that's something new, because we're taught always to, you know, forget about that person in the nursing facility or that relative that's sick and dying, and just kind of pretend they don't exist, and to go see them is so depressing, and you know, when it comes time to dying, you don't want to be around, or you just kind of want to say goodbye and then get out of there. And it's just like we have a whole aversion as a society towards death and dying, and it only makes the sick person feel more ashamed about themselves. And they shouldn't. They should be loved on. They should be embraced. They should just have like this tremendous space opened up for them whether they're involved with exit or they're dying, you know, quote unquote naturally, or they're in hospice with palliative medicine, whatever the case is, that we have to open up that space for the soul to transition and go back to where they came from, right? Because as James Van Praagh says, this is not our home, this is a school, and we come here to learn. So this is all part of my learning. Exit, progressive MS, right to die, you know, shame and fear about death and dying. All of this is the soul's journey, and you just have to kind of embrace it. So, alright, so that's my video diary, and I will definitely be doing some more as I make my way on some bucket lists, and then, you know, heading back to Switzerland on that plane. Okay.